Thank you so much for joining us, Mark. Truly a pleasure to have you on Brand Equity.
No problem. Thank you.
So I'm really interested to know what the Millward Brown predictions are for the whole digital and media landscape in 2015. And, I know that you've put out this grand report. One of your key trends that you actually have predicted happening in 2015 is the fact that you're saying social and mobile will not, act in silos, and they'd probably be merged and they would be interlinked. How do you see that happen? If you can give me an example or, try and make me understand what exactly you mean by that.
Yeah, I think at the moment what you see is there's been a lot of fragmentation of platforms in the digital space. So Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and they've all got their own platforms. They all provide some really good information on who's been exposed to those videos or who's been exposed to the advertising or content, whatever it happens to be. So lots and lots of quantitative data that comes back within the own platform.
Right.
So marketers are getting a good sense of how things are happening within that platform, but what they're not seeing is how it fits with the rest of their media plans. So what tends to happen is brands are looking at those particular platforms in complete isolation from other things that they're doing within the marketplace.
Another interesting point that's come out is the fact that, big data has been the buzzword for a few years now. And, one of the points in the report states that, while they are very data rich, they're very insights poor. I think that's a very pertinent point because you have all this data and access to this data, but what do you do with it? Right? So give me a sense of how this insights rich phenomena will really come about.
Yeah. Well, I think what's happened now with big data is it became the buzzword of the industry, and everyone was at a race to I want to get the biggest data set I can possibly get. So they were just chasing lots and lots of data, and there was kudos in saying, I've got big data. But what we've found is that people actually haven't been able to use that data because it's been too hard, too complex, and difficult for them to actually get anything meaningful out of.
Right.
So I think what's going to start happening now is that brands are going to start really questioning the type of data that they've got, which data they can actually put to use, and which data they can't. And they'll start focusing on the data they can really put to use. I think there'll be a bit of a consolidation around the big data sets that are being used and supplemented with other types of data.
Right.
And the other area, I think, is around the types of data that's out there is very direct response driven. Did I click on it? Did I go through and buy the site? That type of thing, which is great if you're an e-commerce site and you're wanting to understand who's put stuff in the shopping cart, who's abandoned that type of thing. But from a brand point of view, it's not just about that immediate transaction all the time. It's about how are people thinking about my brand? How am I making them feel after they're being exposed to the different content? And how's that changing? Which is a lot more difficult to get from big data environments. So starting to understand attitudes and switching more towards brand type metrics, I think is a change that will happen in that data marketplace.
Right. You also talked about people increasingly looking at, taking off from your previous point on how people will look at programmatic buying and how that will change. And one is wondering that whether programmatic buying is really damaging the brand or really enhancing the brand. If you can give me a sense of, how programmatic worked in the last 2 years and how marketers viewed that, and how there's slowly and steadily a change in mindset and a view towards programmatic.
Yeah. I think programmatic's been very effective for marketers over the last couple of years. We've seen a massive growth in that. It's meant that they've been able to be more efficient in terms of the buying that they're doing. It's meant that they've increased the volume of impressions they've got out there in the marketplace and therefore the ad impressions that they're seeing. But again, most of the programmatic buying is done based around those direct response style metrics that I talked about, so impressions and clicks and that sort of thing. Now, what we've seen from the work that we do is that those type of metrics don't always correlate to making an impact on your brand and changing people's attitudes about the brand and making them more likely to purchase your brand going forward. So we've also found that too much advertising out there in the marketplace and frequency is way too high can actually be negative towards brands. So I think brands are going to start questioning how much inventory they've got out there in the marketplace and what their real objectives are from that programmatic buy, and they'll start looking at how they can incorporate some of those attitudinal metrics into those programmatic equations, really thinking about what impact it has on the brand and how that will play over time.
Mark, what are your top of mind readings for the Indian market and really Indian marketers? How far behind the curve are we with from the rest of the world?
Don't know that you're that far behind the rest of the world. I think one thing that's really interesting in the Indian market is the development of mobile, because I think India is going to go straight to mobile rather than focus on PCs and computers and that sort of thing. So I think what we're going to find is some of the developing countries are going to really probably jump ahead in terms of mobile development and how that plays out. So I think
yeah,
there's a real
so
chance to lead the game.
a lot of people have been saying that, you know, developing markets such as India will probably, you know, skip the whole desktop era altogether and move to mobile. The point is, even in the Western world where advertising is more sophisticated than it is here, how have marketers successfully used mobile? Not so many, right? Because even if you look at the big MNCs and the big brands, none of them have mobile-ready sites. So, and they still have websites. Very few of them are, you know, really thinking mobile and, you know, getting their paraphernalia around mobile ready. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, how really mobile will be leveraged is still, you know, a billion-dollar question.
Oh, and I think you're right. People are still learning in that mobile space. People are experimenting. They're doing different things, and the big unique thing about the mobile is how personal that device is.
Yeah.
So it's not just a blast it out, throw it out in front of me type environment. You really do need almost permission to participate in that environment. So there always has to be some level of payback for the consumer to engage with the brand in that environment. And working all that out, some brands are doing it well, some brands are struggling a little bit with it, but it is very much an evolving space, but it's going to continue to accelerate given the rate of mobile penetration and the growth in that population.
On that note, Mark, this has been truly insightful, and all the very best to you, and hopefully 2015 will see marketers being a lot more savvier.
Thank you.